I talk about the journey of fertility like you are on a 100-mile uphill hike with 60 pounds of gear on your back, and there's minefields of grief along the way. Like, it is so hard. And people are just going on like things are just regular. They're going to work, they're doing all the things, which is good. But again, it's this huge hidden struggle.
What is going on, everybody? It is Ed Gow Jr. of the Dad Central Show and Dad Central. And yes, I'm in the leaves. Drew?
Well, hey, Ed, this is Drew Solon from Dad Central and the Dad Central Show. I am not in the leaves, but I've been in leaves dealing with them in my backyard.
Have you raked any yet?
I tend to use the mower and mulch it now. I have a lot of yard and a lot of trees. So
okay,
it's
all right.
A lot simpler to do it that way.
Okay, all right. Hey, that's a hack. I love that. That's a good dad hack.
My neighbor, he told me. I finally listened 3 years later.
Okay. Well, before we go any further, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So what's been going on in your world, Drew?
One quick story, talking with my 10-year-old daughter, about how all her friends have technology, cell phone or iPad. In fact, maybe she'll be a consultant down the road. She already did a survey of her class and found out how many of them had iPhones or had iPads or had a computer. And then she came and reported the results back to indicate her point. She's the only one who doesn't have any one of those three. So for another conversation, another time, but we had a good conversation about, the pressures of not having something that everyone else has. And so it was some hard, but good in that she was able to feel comfortable enough to share. And we were able to, I think I was able to meet her where she was as far as the feeling of just, I don't fit with my class because everyone else has these. But I remind you, she's 10 years old. Anyways, I digress.
Well, the fear of missing out syndrome, she doesn't have that. But hey, in line of the new friend we're going to have on the show today, maybe there's a research assistant position in the making for our friend that we have coming on today. And and just want to FYI people who are watching this, whenever you're watching this, we have got incredible new friends coming on the platform. Like Drew doesn't know there's a whole other group now that's going to become, he isn't even aware yet. I
love surprises, Ed.
Well, good surprises. There is a whole group of new friends we have coming on the platform. AK, we have another new friend on today, and I saw that she was part of an event, and I said, you know what? I like to speak with her. I like to get her on the show. Plus, she lives in Toronto where I live. So, Drew, let's do the introduction.
Well, today we're going to have Dr. Stacy Thomas on the show. She is the founder and clinical director of the Design Your Life Center, which is a private psychotherapy practice in Toronto. So Dr. Stacy, as she calls herself, she's been a practicing psychologist for 22 years. And so we're excited. I'm excited to have her on the show and looking forward to hearing more about her practice and how she serves. Dr. Stacy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ed and Drew. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Well, I reached out to Dr. Stacy and she was just bang, no, just as bang, just making it happen. So we are really excited to have you on the show today. We had a great pre-conversation and we align a lot with what you're doing, and we're very excited to have you share some of your journey, some of how you are helping people get wins.
Thank you so much, Ed. Again, so honored to be here. And, the way you describe just the synergy of things, like when you know, and that's kind of how I live my life. I'm just like, that's a clear yes, especially because I'm being invited into a space for men. And that I think is the best way especially when you're not necessarily part of a group. It's like the group has to come and reach out for you. And I've been fortunate in my training and my work experience to work with a lot of men, actually. In my early days as a psychologist, my first part of my career, actually, most of those 22 years is working with people with chronic pain following an injury. And most of those clients were men, actually, who were injured at work or injured in car accidents. And it was the worst moment of their lives to be in that state, right? Where in a second, everything changes and they can't rely on their bodies anymore. And the way they define themselves is now questionable, right? Because they can't go back to that thing. And that accident, that piece of misfortune, for some of them opened up a big opportunity for them to ask, or for me to ask and to explore with them the bigger question, like, well, maybe you are more than what you do. Maybe your body is telling you a lot. Like there's a little too much of feeling right now, too much suffering coming through. But maybe there's an opportunity for you to find the balance of your capacity to push past things, but also informed by wisdom from something that's coming from within. So I found myself flourishing in those conversations, and with people that felt abandoned by the medical system, who were just told, well, you have this problem and now you're just going to have to learn how to live with it. Which there is some wisdom, but if you're not providing the support around that, that just feels like, see ya. There's another phrase I could use to describe what that feels like, but I won't do that here. So that was a lot of my career was working with people, men in particular, who had found themselves in that situation. And some of them actually became better in a lot of ways. It was a difficult road. Many guys I talked to with severe injuries said, like, the injury itself was hard, but this inner work is harder. This is the hardest part of this recovery process. And that, I think, is universal for whatever happens to the physical body that stops us in our tracks. We can't go on like before. Everyone wants to go back to before that very moment that thing happened. And I guess I bring a wider perspective that I've come to as a result of my many conversations with people, but also my own personal journey as a human of growth, personal growth, which I've come to understand through like practices like yoga and meditation. It's through those practices that I've come to deeply understand the teachings underneath them, which is that growth is not what this society talks about. It's just an additive process. We always just think of like productivity, adding more and more and more and more. It's actually from that idea comes from this foundation that we come in as empty vessels and we need to be taught. We get to be filled with stuff. And that now you have to be better and better because you're ultimately defective. That's the foundation of that way of thinking. I come to this work and to life with a different perspective, which is you arrived here whole, beautiful, good. You're good. Okay, let's start from that foundation. As fathers, I imagine, go back to when you first held your children. Was there any improvement that they needed? Was there, you just were like, oh my God, you're so amazing. Like, look at you. You're so incredible. I get to see you, feel you, touch you, look at you. That's you. That's each and every one of us. A walking miracle. So there's nothing wrong with us at all. What we need to do, though, as a human is, okay, the human path is this. I'm just going to sum it up for you. So, and I'm sharing this so we ground ourselves in this conversation right now, so bring everybody into my assumptive world, okay? So we come in like shiny and new, good, loving, whole beings. And as humans, we're totally helpless. We have no choice but to bond with our caregivers to survive. We're one of the few creatures that are completely helpless, not even fully formed when we come into the world. So the system works. We bond and we read the room extremely well. Okay, we intuitively know what we need to do in order to be cared for, to be loved, to connect. It's connected to our very survival. Okay, so all of that is absorbed at a very deep level. You can't even articulate it. So it's absorbed before you have capacity for episodic memory, which is before we even have language. Okay, so it all works perfectly well, and it serves. It allows you to be in the group until something happens. Something happens, and this is experienced as stress. However, what is that? I think of it as life, like just tapping on the shell that you created, saying, okay, it's time to grow. We're going to have to break this idea in order for you to be able to go forward and express yourself and be yourself, come into yourself, because that shell is all of the things you had to layer on in order to navigate the world safely. Okay? So when something happens, like the trauma happens, like that car accident or that workplace accident, or the spouse leaves, or you fail the test, or whatever it is, it's painful. We don't like that the world has treated us this way. But the only path really is to go within and hear what the story is we're telling ourselves. And often it's an old story. It's a different version of an old story. And that old story has real truth to it for the time that was in the past, but it's likely not fully relevant anymore. And that story is keeping us trapped in the past. We keep reliving the same experience. We keep showing up in the same way. Sometimes we call that our personality. That's not your personality. That's how you've adapted to being in the world, and it's become a habit, what you're known for, your brand, so to speak. But that's maybe not the truth of who you are. Okay? And so we welcome these conversations. We don't wish anybody any suffering, but it's like, okay, you've been called to action now. And let's really understand like what was happening at that time. And we even just unraveling that scenario, we start to see threads of the whole thing, of the pattern that's followed the person their whole lives, that now in this time of distress, there's this opportunity to let go of something and to really get to the core of what it is you really want. Like, because as humans, we have this capacity. We have this creative mind. Our beliefs will dictate everything. So the way we work in my practice is understanding that most of us are really kind of asleep, unconsciously going about the day based on a belief system. We don't even believe there's a belief system there. It's just like, that's just the way the world is. Until we break free of it, we mess around with it a little bit. And we align with something new. And then we're like, oh, it doesn't have to be this way anymore. If I decide I want to be that person who feels really confident and can express themselves, and I might not fully feel confident yet, but I'm going to express myself, because what's holding me back is that I'm afraid I'm going to be shamed or dismissed. What you got to do is express yourself, take on the belief. It's like, of course, this is my place to share something that's real for me. And you do it, and then you see what happens. This is where we have the opportunity to say, oh, I'm living the life of someone who can express themselves, actually. I'm no longer in that place where I'm going to be shamed. So what I'm just giving you is like a Cole's Notes version of what therapy actually is. It's really a process of having conversations to understand our journey. Okay, we have a saying in our practice, you're the hero of your own epic story. That's how we treat every person. And for every hero of the story, think about every story you probably ever read, watched, every movie. It starts, where does it start? In the middle, okay? Where there's been total destruction, loss, the person is disoriented, everything they've known, they're launched into a new reality alone, okay? And they stumble along and they find a guide to kind of help them figure out what is already within them. Okay, the power that they have to access. And they're on a quest for something. Okay. And so this is how we see it, is like, okay, you're the hero. What's happened? What is the thing? What's the piece of work that you have to do at this moment anyway, that's been following you for a while, but you've been able to bypass it? You said, yeah, no, I'm not. I got the message, but no. Now it's come to that point where it's like, I can't go on anymore. Okay, now's the time. Great. And now we start to help the person, guide them, help them learn processes to access that inner wisdom, make different conscious choices. I can take the old, very well trodden path, or I can start a new one and see what's possible. And here we go. And this is how people create a new reality. So that's what therapy actually is. Okay. And I think this is what we're all here to do as humans, is learn how to navigate this thing and also have a great time while we're here. Those two things. Learn how to navigate your mind and create something awesome for yourself, which automatically has ripple effects of creating great things for other people as well. So that's it.
Yeah, that's a great goal. I just want to touch quickly on, or maybe even try and summarize. So people come to your practice, they've pretty much been on autopilot a little bit, not maybe fully aware or conscious of what's been going on. Some situation has come up and they are struggling. It's kind of woken them up maybe, but they've had a shakeup, and you meet them in that shakeup and the confusion and the whatever else is coming up, and then you help them make sense of it, where it's coming from, and then help them walk forward to create what it is that they want based off of a current story, not necessarily stories from the past.
Right.
To follow along?
Yes, it's both. We have to understand what's going to haunt us, because so in our practice, it's not just people going through challenges they don't want, but also people who embrace challenge. So the high performers, whether it's athletes, we're proud to support some of our Olympians, whether it's someone who's just gotten a promotion and they're feeling shaky. Okay, so this is the truth about challenge. At both the times when we don't want the challenge or when we're actually actively going towards a challenge, that promotion sounds like a great idea. But then we're like, oh my gosh, I'm just realizing now I'm more seen. Now I'm actually more vulnerable than I was before. And all the old stories will come up, okay? The things all your insecurities. So, and this is why, we will look at the people in the spotlight and think, oh, they've got it made. Yeah, sure, to some extent. However, if they're going to survive that, and we know so many people in the spotlight who don't, right? If they're going to survive that, they are going to need some real grounding. And this is when the work gets really intense. Okay, when you have these outside pressures and you have to learn how to navigate that and stay centered and clear. Okay, that's not easy to do. And trust me, the ones who are great really are able to be in touch with their own story and have real respect for that, know how to care for that. Okay, so it's both. So understand, we are just like everything you see, all the plants around you. We are here to grow, and that whether it's a challenge you choose or the challenge you don't, it's actually a very similar process. The emphasis is a little different. So this is why in our practice, we meet people most often when they're struggling. And then we get to see them, we help with the path. And then it's like, okay, now you're where you wanted to be. And now, oh, look what's coming up again. And we learned about that story earlier on. So it's a really lovely to see people through that arc and have them keep going, right? The path is somewhat different, but they're reminded again of their own process. It doesn't go away, of how they show up for themselves in order to move through those blocks that are necessarily the survival system is going to say, don't go, stay hidden. It's dangerous out there. And we have to just know that, okay, I know this story I don't have to bend to it. I don't have to allow it to rule. I can note it. I can accept that it's there. I can acknowledge, thank you so much. You are protecting me. And let's just see what's going to happen, because I want to know what's possible in my life. And I'm willing. If it's bad, let it be bad. I'll deal with it. Okay, so that's kind of the path that we're all on potentially. Yeah.
Okay. When I think of the journey of fatherhood,
Mm-hmm.
something comes into your life, wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
but it presents new opportunities, but also finding yourself in places that you're not quite sure how to navigate.
Yeah.
And you probably have a story for yourself of how you want it to turn out, but may see yourself not showing up that way, or it not happening, and there's a lot of other influences external. There's a lot of pressure. So what you just walked through, I almost see, well, that's that, new parent, you could say new parent journey, but certainly for fathers, when you talk about the idea of support, traditionally fathers don't have as much dedicated support, or aren't even viewed as contributors in the whole parenting process. They're viewed as one way. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, because I believe you see people in the process of infertility or in the pre and postnatal journey. Maybe you could talk about how you would meet a dad in that scenario who's maybe going through some of those challenges to those stories and challenges to achieving what they want.
Right.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, believe it or not, I mean, there are different kinds of stresses, right? When we're trying to conceive, there's a lot, it's like a roller coaster, man. Like, talk about a quest. This is, I think, part of the reason why I started to work in this area. I just felt have so much respect for people who want to bring more love into their lives and into the world. And I think of it as the most noble quest there is to try to be a parent. There's no journey that is more transformative than being a parent. And it was something that I wanted for my whole life. And at one point, I didn't think I was going to have. And I did not, I'm fortunate, I'll just say, I did not struggle with fertility, but I was a late bloomer, an older mom, came to find my partner later in life. And I went through those ups and downs and had to actually let go of the agenda of having children in order to follow my heart, follow my own inner wisdom, found myself in the right place. And I was lucky, very lucky to have 2 kids of my own. But it was after becoming a parent and, my daughter, my second child coming into my life is what opened up the opportunity for me to say no to working in what was becoming a very corporate kind of healthcare environment that just did not fit with me anymore. I left that with no plan. I just closed the door, made it difficult for myself to go back because it was just a very easy gig for me. I had my daughter and I was walking around going, gosh, universe, God, whatever, please show me a sign. I have no idea what I should be doing next. I didn't know that people would go to see a psychologist. They didn't get sent by an insurance company. I had no concept of how that worked. And I was talking to a cousin of mine. My daughter was with me. We had a plan to go for lunch, and she is a fertility specialist. And I was talking about my own, fears, my own feeling of being lost, not sure what to do. And she's like, why don't you do fertility counseling? Like, you have the right kind of background. And it just kind of landed. And I started talking and sharing and asking, and all these people that were in my midst, like parents of my sons, I had an older son, my son's friends, so many had been through that journey. So many, I had one dad talking to me, who I just met, really. We were hanging out, waiting for our kids at some extracurricular. They already had a child, but they were trying for their second. And he was really pouring his heart out to me of how challenging it was and how concerned he was about his wife and how depressed she seemed to be. And I was like, my gosh, I can't believe people are going through this and they don't have anyone to talk to about it. Yeah, this is the hardest thing. I talk about the journey of fertility, you are on a 100-mile uphill hike with 60 pounds of gear on your back, and there's minefields of grief along the way. It is so hard. And people are just going on things are just regular. They're going to work, they're doing all the things, which is good, but again, it's this huge hidden struggle. And so again, like I seem to be attracted to people with impossible challenges that no one really quite knows how to help. So I dug in and I did some extra training. I sat in my cousin's fertility clinic. I listened to tons of stories. I started consulting, and I started to build my practice. And that is the foundation actually of my private practice. This is no longer working for someone else. And the approach that I've taken is maybe a bit different than some. Like certainly we want to equip people with a lot of tools to help them communicate, manage their emotions, deal with grief. Ultimately, the clients that come to me, I tend to attract people who are high achievers, used to having everything in control. And this throws them for a loop, right? They're doing all the right things and somehow it's not working. And for me, that is kind of a metaphor for what it is to be a parent anyway, right? Like there's only so much control you can have over your kid. And even the whole idea of controlling gets us into trouble a lot as parents. It really, if we can emphasize connecting, we have this entry point where we have more influence. Okay. And we have a different dynamic and actually end up with more control, so to speak, without trying to control it. Do you know what I mean? It's a different energy, different entry point, because as humans, empathy works. That is the way all the time. So what is that? How is that relevant to infertility? The way it's relevant is I think of those clients as already starting the parenting process, actually. They don't have a baby, they don't have a child. Okay, well, what do I mean? It's like there is an inner kid inside that's freaking out, that has some ideas about how things should be. And because it's not working out that way, there's something wrong with them. There's an inner kid that needs to be supported. And that is actually, in my way of approaching parenting, which I would phrase as conscious parenting, is that we as parents, as we are parenting well, we're actually taking care of our own stuff first. So we can actually see this other being for who they are more clearly. Okay, so for me, when we're in a process before the child comes, why not? Why not learn this process before? Rather than the usual way, like we're okay, like we have all the things in line, we got the stuff that we need to buy, we got like the plan for the birth, and then like in the 11th hour, we're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. What's the thing? Like, how am I supposed to be a parent? We're like falling back on whatever we can grab, and most of the time we're just falling back on our own experience, right? Mm-hmm. And we tell ourselves stories, well, it was good enough for me, so what's the problem? I'm like, well, I should just make that in like a male voice, but this is sometimes what I often hear when there's
right.
resistance to opening up to have these conversations, because this is how it's supposed to go. Our children are supposed to have it better than us. And we have an opportunity to actually look at, we can honor what was great, but also to look at what wasn't great. And until we're willing to do that, we will just pass on unconsciously the same idea. So we talk these days, we have an understanding of intergenerational trauma, the stuff that's handed down. What we're handing down with that intergenerational trauma are beliefs. The belief system gets handed down, and you're not conscious of it. Okay? And you may not have even experienced anything particularly traumatic, but you read the room correctly. So I could give like a really quick example from my own life, which is, I come from one Canadian parent, one immigrant parent. Never be late. Like, you're just never late. Never be late. I was never late. Never be late. I'm a parent now. It's like two kids, trying to get out the door. Come on, we're gonna be late. Like trauma, right?
Just stress right there as soon as you say, can you get the door on time?
Oh my gosh, right? So, and then for me in the car, I'm like, okay, let's I try to repair in the car. Let's talk about our intentions of the day. We make it all nice. Love you, bye. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. And talk to the kids. I'm like, kids, like, how are you finding the mornings? Like, I'm not having a good time. Can we cooperate? So we're cooperating. Things are going a little bit better. And then, like in the pandemic, then no one's going to school anymore. And I am going to the office by myself. I'm like, okay, I gotta go. I was like, come on, Stacy. Like, what is happening here? What is happening here? So I had to sit down with myself and look at that. I'm like, what am I afraid of? Like, why am I so freaked out? I'm fortunate. I live like max 10 minutes from where I work. I own the place. My clients are very nice. Like if I'm a couple minutes late, it's not going to be a big deal. And yet I'm reacting as if I'm going to get in trouble. And I was never really late as a kid with my parents, but I've absorbed like in a magical, mystical way, this idea that something really bad is going to happen if I'm late. And if I think about my father and who he is in the world and what he has to deal with and how he is judged differently, there are serious consequences that he fears if he is late. This is what I mean. Okay. So it requires us to kind of go deep and understand a bit more about our unconscious programming. And now I can do something different because I can create a different reality. And I can say, okay, what do I want to experience? I want to be chill and relaxed and grounded when I go to work. What's that version of me believe? I have an abundance of time. So I can reorganize myself, force myself to do the thing I call itchy, which is slow down, calm, and I show up and I have more time to spare. That's reality. Okay. Mm-hmm. My point here being that when we are in this stage, before the kids come, when you're going through all the turmoil, all the stories that are coming up, all the self-talk, that is not necessarily new. We have a lot of assumptions and we have to learn to navigate a reality where you're not in control, but you have access to something, which is this inner kid inside, and learning how to listen. Number one, acknowledge what's the truth. Maybe apply some skills to help manage the emotions that are coming up. Maybe, often in the dynamic of heterosexual couples, for example, whoever is perceived, usually in the scenario where it's the woman who has a problem, okay? Even if it is a male factor infertility, if you're doing something like IVF, for example, it's really onerous on the woman physically at every level. And so there's this perception that as the man in the dynamic, I have nothing to say here. Like she's the one that's going through everything. And so you see this silent, stoic man often with a very emotional partner. And what I often have to say is that this dynamic here is you're perpetuating a scenario where you have the emotions of the other one are stronger and stronger and stronger. She's actually calling out for you to share something so she doesn't feel so alone. And he's telling the story, well, it's not about me. I'm like, I need to support her. But it's like, okay, this is wonderful. And you're also having this experience. It's really important for the two of you. It will be better together. Right now, you're kind of side by side, but you're not really with her. And let's figure out how we can be supportive of you, figuring out how to express what's actually happening. Because what can happen in lieu of that, in addition to feeling like as a couple, people are growing apart with this, Sometimes men are turning to alcohol. Sometimes there's extramarital stuff going on. Sometimes, like, these are all ways of trying to find a space where they can breathe, where they can relax, where they don't have to deal with what's going on. And that avoidance pattern, all of those are forms of avoidance, is because they don't feel they have a place. Their emotions are secondary. Okay. And they may not feel it's okay to even express, not because of anything in relation to their partner, but just they've never dealt with this kind of thing before. And all of the barriers around weakness, like you should just be able to suck it up and go on, this all comes into play. Again, the story. So this story needs to shift and change, and to recognize that the way forward needs to be informed by this, like whatever's happening. What the truth is, that each of us carry this inner wisdom, but if we're cut off from our bodies, cut off from our emotions, we can't access it.
Are you a dad who feels like you're juggling a million things at once? Balancing work, family, and personal goals can be overwhelming. But what if there was a solution? That's why we created our new fatherhood community called Dad Mentor. For over 20 years, Dad Central has built practical tools to help dads. We understand the challenges you face and provide the support you need to thrive. The biggest complaint we hear from dads is there's no dedicated support for their specific needs. But not anymore. Our new community, called Dad Mentor, is here to transform your fatherhood experience. Imagine feeling in control, staying calm and patient when your children misbehave. Picture yourself connected to your children, guiding them with confidence and watching them succeed. When you join Dad Mentor, you'll have access to a community of like-minded dads committed to their dad journey, just like you. You'll also get the Dad's Roadmap. This is a step-by-step plan to help you go from unsure to unstoppable as a dad. Monthly masterclasses and Q&A sessions. You'll get answers and know exactly what to do straight from experts. Monthly group meetups that connect dads over common topics. A dad's resource library. Curated webinars, podcasts, or guides built by Dad Central to help you grow as a parent. And finally, you'll also get exclusive members-only offers and events. Now, many dads do try to do this fatherhood thing alone, only to find themselves trapped in frustration and strained relationships. Then they may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs, alcohol, or other distractions, leaving their family and their own well-being at risk. We don't want you to reach that point of regret. Take steps to invest in you and your family today. Join Dad Mentor and go from stressed, tired, and overwhelmed to confident, calm, and connected. Join us today by going to dadcentral.ca/dads.
Yeah, and I think that last point about our own emotions is really important. In fact, in a recent recording, we talk about dads having a safe place to be able to actually express what's going on. And the conversation point was around, you've got a partner who's going through a hard time. I don't feel safe. But this dad was actually talking about how once he did get the bravery up to actually talk about, hey, here's what I'm struggling with, it actually opened the door to more connection between the two of them. And it gave his partner an opportunity to be supportive of him through his difficulty. He was unweighted, and then he could then also go back and be engaged with her in a better way. And so can you talk specifically about, the challenges that dads face as far as being able to, one, acknowledge or recognize their own emotions, and two, be able to express them in a way that they can relate well with others. Can you talk about that? And I guess, if you're open to that.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for this question, because, as you reflected, that it is a misconception that there's no space for them. I think what makes it challenging sometimes in a dynamic of relationship is that the female partner, or if it's a gay couple, the partner who does most of the emotional labor has some expectations maybe of okay, you also do something to take care of your feelings too. So there is a sense of, great, let's connect, and you need to learn how to deal with those feelings, and I need to deal with these feelings, and we need to come together from that place. Okay, so it's balanced. The partner who is more used to dealing with the emotions, and this is a thing that there are some, we can argue like chicken and egg, but physiologically, okay, for most males in society, we know from our research, like if we hook people up to, sensors and we're measuring blood pressure and all the physiological indicators of stress, we would see that women have far greater tolerance for emotion. Like they can absorb it, hold the space. They don't have the same level of reactivity than men. They look fine. Like you can't tell much is going on, but their reactivity internal is like through the roof. Okay. So I'm just highlighting that difference, that it's probably a combination of biology and environment in terms of the lack of support that we give to boys for having emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We start this social.
Can I just check in on that last point? You're saying that when you're measuring, so men will have physiologically significant spikes,
yes,
right? But outwardly, it won't be observed,
right?
So we'll just keep it all together, but inside we get like we're churning.
Yes, absolutely.
And whereas women will have a greater tolerance for the churning inside, or maybe not as high churn, but they'll be more. You'll see it more. It'll be more observed.
Meaning that they will be able to hold the space. Like you can talk about your feelings. It doesn't create as much stress within.
Oh, okay. I get it.
That's what I mean. So there may be, some evolutionary advantage to that if women in traditional roles are taking care of the babies. It's helpful if they can tolerate the crying and all of this. That said, there's also a sociological component, again, with boys, that we expect them to be tough. Like, as soon as they start walking.
Yeah, they're socialized. Don't man up, don't cry.
Yes, be tough. There's some, again, imbalance, right? There's some, it's great. It's like, okay. Like, we can see you're okay.
What you're saying is that's very unhealthy in terms of what you're training them to, a young boy, to deny the fact that they actually are a whole being that has emotions, that actually you can have a full range and begin to express it in healthy ways. And that actually helps you as you grow.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I think I'm excited. Again, I was so excited when you called. I just said, yes, because I think this is so important around the world, that we allow every human to be a full human. Okay. Trauma will cut us off from our emotions. That's how we survive things. Okay. But if we don't have a new idea that this isn't about being weak, okay, we have to change this whole conversation. This is about being fully intelligent. Fully intelligent. Okay, so not just here intelligent of whatever's been put into us, our academic knowledge, but like as a being, being able to read, like, or the emotions say, go, don't go. I can share a little story that is a moment that really struck me in terms of with my son. When this was a few years ago, maybe about 4 years ago. He's 13 now. So he's like 9-ish. We were traveling in a foreign country, and this didn't happen around me. It was at a different part of this resort we were in. And supposedly the story was that my son approached me super, super distressed. And he didn't, was crying and was so upset and so mad. There was this little girl that was half his age that was chasing him and wanting to hold him and kiss him, and and he was running and like trying to say no. And his father was like, what's your problem? Like, come on. And in my ear, he wanted to punch her. He wanted to hit her because she was chasing him. She wasn't respecting his no. And he knew he couldn't do that. We had to have a conversation, including with his dad. It's like, he has the right to say no to being touched, to being approached when he's not comfortable. And none of the adults there saw that. It was in full view, right? No one came to his defense. And he knew that he wasn't allowed to hit or do anything. And he was so distressed, caught in that moment. Okay, so we processed it together, just me and him, because his dad got it afterwards, but his own programming, blocked him from seeing what the dilemma was. That this was a boundary violation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that he had the right to feel that way, and he did his best, and it had to be recognized. And we didn't have to talk about it again. He didn't want to talk about it again. That's okay. But I felt like I just share that as an example of how we do not see our boys fully. And when we suppress this stuff gets acted out later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the importance then of helping our boys safely express their emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good, bad, or ugly, without
Mm-hmm.
any form of judgment, and helping them work through it is you're saying that's really crucial. So that they can learn to feel and experience the full range of emotions that you have as a human,
mm-hmm.
without fear, without judgment, without it's not okay.
Yeah. And I'm fortunate, at my child's school, my son, they have a process of, for the morning, like round circle, share whatever you want to share. And a great context is boys and girls together, prepubescent, bordering on adolescence, and can confront each other. Kids that have had trauma in their past, kids that have maybe said something that hurt someone's feelings, and having this really healthy way of saying, that other day when you're doing this, it wasn't cool, and I didn't want to hang out with you after that. And being able to look at someone and apologize and make it good and move on. I was like, really? Thank goodness this is happening. We need more of this.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just mindful of the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we can go deeper, but I think for now maybe this is a great place for us to wind down. So Ed, over to you.
Well, I know Dr. Stacy, I'm going to say we need to have you back, because I think there's so much more to peel here in regards to the conversation. Just like to know, if people want to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to go?
The best place is to go to the website for designyourlifecenter.com. If you are a resident of Ontario, we see clients in person in our Toronto office, but also online throughout Ontario. I would say join our newsletter. You'll see it on the webpage, because we have a lot of exciting things available for people. So one of the missions is to make what we do as accessible as possible. On the website, you'll see a journal that I put together that you can download for free and use. We also have coming soon a new project, a new platform called the Design Your Life Community, where we are doing courses, master classes. The transformation happens so much faster and in such a more engaging way when we can bust this idea that you're the only one, and can come into, really engaged conversations with content that you can use. It's practical. You put it into place, you come back, you share. I'm really excited about this. I decided to do it because, again, it just seems like right now, with all that's happened, we need community more than ever. And we have to find efficient, cost-effective ways to help people learn these tools and the mindset to put it into place and have support to make it happen. So that's coming soon. So you want to join the newsletter because you will get the first dibs on that community and everything we have to offer there.
Well, fantastic. Well, I know we're right up against it. You got a client that's probably waiting. So what we'd like to say is to you, your family, and all the people that you serve, continued success, past, present, and future. And as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace.
Wow. Love that. Love
Okay.
that.
The little I said was effective. That is good. All right. Something that resonated. Well, look, we will be in touch. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thank you, guys.
Be well.
Thank you.
All right. Fantastic.
I love how you switch it in the middle so that I get the big screen as soon as our guest leaves.
Yes. Well,
For those
why
who
not?
are listening on the audio, you won't see that, obviously.
Why not?
The video. Oh, I appreciate that. That's good. Yeah.
No problem.
Make sure
No
I'm
problem.
looking good as best as I can.
There you go. There you go. Any and a take home from that conversation?
The last point about young boys being able to express, acknowledge their emotions, express their emotions, and be accepted for their full range of emotions. I think the other part that's from that story was, boundaries. Boundaries are crucial. I think there's a lot of parallels. I could have spun off further, but the takeaway is the emotions piece, and I think that's important for all children, but in particular for boys, as if we're going to change things as they grow.
Good stuff. A lot to compress there and get through, and I think we should have her back because there's so much more that she could share. I think for me, one of the points is just, especially for dads, that you come here complete. You're not lacking.
Great point.
You know that you're not lacking. We have many a father that, I'm not this, this, but you come whole and complete. You just need some help. That's it. Really,
well
I think it's a really powerful point that Dr. Stacy, I'll call that Dr. Stacy, said that, you're not lacking. We are already full. We just need to get a little bit of help along the way to steer us. Because as I always say, even strong people struggle. So I think that she really did a great job. Go ahead, Drew.
I think that the more you go through struggle, the stronger you can get. Doesn't always happen that way, but I think you can, because the only way, I go back to my days of being a student athlete and training physically, the only way that I actually got stronger was to break the muscle down.
Hey,
so that I can recover better.
It's like one of my mentors said that there's going to be friction, and you go to any river, and there's a lot of times there's rocks in that river, and there is water hitting those rocks. The rock is still there. The rock is still there, even with the friction of that water. We got to get rid of you, rock. No, the rock is still there. The rock is still there. So another great conversation. As always, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there is positive impact. Well, we'd love to hear from you, and we hope to hear from you, because we just keep on putting out great content for dads and families and those that love them. You can email us, podcast@dadcentral.ca. Give us your suggestions. We'd love your feedback. Also, you want to catch out the podcast, dadcentral.ca/podcast. And especially on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. Leave us some feedback. We want to know. And finally, we have a lot of great resources, a lot of free resources on dadcentral.ca. And as always, I'd like to say thank you for listening. Share it out. Remember to give yourselves grace, and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. And we'll catch you soon. Be well and keep the faith.